In a feel-good rebirth novel, there exists a seemingly minor canon fodder character. Tang Cheng, who once schemed to marry her beloved prince, suddenly finds herself engaged to the heir of the Duke of Zhenguo, a man known for his difficulty in fathering children. But just 1 month later, she becomes pregnant. And that is where a heartwarming and unexpected love story begins. But in this story, Tang Cheng is no longer the blind canon fodder. She is a transmigrator, from an interstellar empire, unaware of the tragic fate the original character once faced. When handed a dark vial of abortion medicine, she simply smiles, throws it away, and vows to protect the little life within her. When Huayan, the heir admired by countless noble ladies, now stands beside Tang Cheng, a man once believed to be childless, finds his destiny changed by a woman who brings him miracles. From a marriage of schemes grows a family envied by the world. This is the journey from canon fodder to the true mistress of happiness, a tale filled with warmth and unexpected turns. You're listening to the story on Galaxxy romance novel. If you enjoy it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, so you won't miss the next chapters. A spectacular drama had just come to an end. The crowd, still buzzing with excitement, gradually dispersed. A maid in a green dress hurried over to the princess consort of Prince Cheng and whispered something in her ear. The princess consort's brow furrowed slightly. So her son had truly taken a liking to Miss Tang, the third daughter of the Tang family, Tang Cheng. She had been quite pleased with Tang Cheng at first. The young lady came from a good family, was beautiful, and carried herself with grace, more than worthy of her second son. But Tang Cheng's outburst just now, scolding the fourth Miss Tang without understanding the situation, had left the princess consort deeply disappointed. Perhaps her expectations had been too high, and that only made the disappointment sharper. Still, considering the current state of the Marquis of Nanyang's household, the princess consort gave it some thought. Her second son was unremarkable compared to his elder brother, and would likely live out his life as a minor royal with no real responsibilities. To form a marriage alliance with the legitimate daughter of the Marquis of Nanyang was already a fine match. Besides, her son was clearly interested. Might as well have the official matchmaker pay a visit in the coming days. With that thought, the princess consort of Prince Cheng immediately sent someone to invite the Marchioness of Nanyang and Miss Tang Cheng to the side hall. Tang Cheng looked at the beautiful maid before her in surprise. "You're saying Her Highness wants to see me?" "Yes, third Miss Tang." "This way, please," the maid replied respectfully. "Wait a moment." Tang Cheng pressed her lips together and walked over to Tang Cheng, her expression complicated. Thinking of how her younger sister had kicked Miss Xie into the lake without hesitation, she couldn't help but whisper a warning. "Fourth sister, I'll be gone for a bit. Don't cause any more trouble." Tang Cheng stared at her. "Tang Cheng, are you out of your mind? When did I cause trouble? That was a setup, someone framed me, can't you see that?" Tang Cheng glared at her in frustration. "Even so, you shouldn't have kicked her into the water like that. Are you not worried your reputation's bad enough already?" Tang Cheng snorted. "Reputation? That's useless to me. I prefer settling scores on the spot." Thinking of Xie Xuaning's humiliating retreat, Tang Cheng felt quite pleased with herself. Tang Cheng looked at her stubborn sister, furious yet helpless. She didn't dare say outright that she was afraid Tang Cheng would drag her reputation down too. So in the end, she just gave her a fierce glare and turned to leave. Tang Cheng curled her lips in amusement. Did Tang Cheng think she couldn't see through her? She simply refused to play along. With a leisurely air, she tossed the remaining fish food into the lake. Not far away, Lu Jintong gave Tang Cheng a deep, wary glance before quietly leaving with her maid. She decided to focus her attention back on the fourth prince instead. Tang Cheng was far too reckless, and what was worse, everyone seemed to have gotten used to it. Just look at Xie Xuaning, trying to set her up only to end up disgraced. Lu Jintong resolved to steer clear of her old enemy, who was now even more arrogant and dangerous than in her past life. Meanwhile, when Huayan was striding toward Tang Cheng, his two friends following behind with keen interest, "I already went easy on her," Tang Cheng said innocently as soon as she saw him. "Zhenju and Hupa." When Huayan was speechless, he raised his hand wanting to pat her head, but thought better of it and lowered it again. "I know. She brought it on herself. Tang Cheng brightened immediately. Exactly. I was going to let her off, but she just wouldn't give up. Did she think I'd take the blame without fighting back? You really didn't hold back, exposing her swimming skills in front of everyone. That was brutal. Now your mother and Miss Xia probably hate you to death. Tang Cheng looked absolutely delighted. Zhenju and Hoopa covered their faces. Miss is way too happy. Young Master One is going to have a breakdown at this rate. When Huaiyan choked, the heir of the Duke of Dingbei, the eldest son of the Duke of Qi, the two young lords looked at Wen Huaiyan with sympathy before turning to Tang Cheng with amused grins. Fourth Miss Tang, we've heard so much about you. Tang Cheng looked at the two elegant, handsome men in fine robes and rummaged through the original host's memories. Apparently, the former Tang Cheng had been obsessed with the fourth prince and completely ignored the other noble young men. She didn't recognize these two at all. Raising an eyebrow, she asked, "And you are?" The two men? They were among the most eligible bachelors in the capital. How could she not know them? Ouch. When Huaiyan gave them a sidelong glance, suddenly in a much better mood. With a smile he introduced them. Tang Cheng, this is Su Jingxing, heir to the Duke of Dingbei. The clever little parrot you like came from him. And this is Qi Changxiu, eldest son of the Duke of Qi. Tang Cheng smiled politely. Nice to meet you. My father's currently compiling a list of eligible young men for me. Judging by your looks, you're probably on it. Zhenju and Hoopa's expressions darkened. Miss, Wen Huaiyan is right there. Please have some mercy. Wen Huaiyan's handsome face turned as dark as the bottom of a pot, a cold aura radiating off him. This heartless woman. So the Tang family hadn't given up on finding a father for her child after all. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu were so startled by her words they almost choked on their own saliva. They did not want to be selected by fourth Miss Tang. Just thinking of her infamous pursuit of the fourth prince made them shudder. Su Jingxing took a deep breath and glanced at Wen Huaiyan's blackened expression. With a dry cough he said, "Ahem. Fourth Miss Tang, Huaiyan is our close friend. And you're the one he likes. We wouldn't dream of crossing that line." Tang Cheng gave them a sideways glance. "You're overthinking it," Tang Cheng said casually. "I was just making conversation. Compared to Wen Huaiyan, you two are still a bit lacking." Su Jingxing. Qi Changxiu. Fourth Miss Tang. Must your disdain be so obvious? They were still top-tier eligible bachelors from prestigious families after all. Wen Huaiyan's expression immediately brightened, the corners of his lips lifting high. He couldn't hide his delight. All those days of deliberately hanging around her finally paid off. He'd raised her standards. In an excellent mood, Wen Huaiyan praised her. "Tang Cheng, that kick you gave Xie Xuaning earlier, absolutely dominant. Xie Xuaning probably wouldn't dare pull any more stunts after that." Tang Cheng waved a hand modestly. "It was nothing. I only used 20% of my strength." Wen Huaiyan raised a brow. "Didn't expect you to hold back." Tang Cheng shot him a look and muttered, "Hold back? Not for enemies. But Miss Xie is so delicate. I was afraid if I used any more force I'd kick her to death. Didn't you say I should go easy on her? That's why I only used 2 parts of my strength. But she's way too light. Flew off the moment I kicked her." Wen Huaiyan, Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu were stunned. So clean, so decisive. And that was only 20% of her strength? This fourth Miss Tang had some terrifying power. After today, they figured most people would take the long way around just to avoid running into her. "Fourth Miss Tang, you're so strong. Does it have something to do with body-enhancing potions?" Su Jingxing asked eagerly, his face full of admiration. Tang Cheng admitted cheerfully, "Yep." Su Jingxing's eyes lit up. "Can you still make them, fourth Miss Tang?" Qi Changxiu looked at her expectantly as well. Tang Cheng. Of course she could. But she couldn't exactly say that. "I'm not sure. Maybe. Why don't you gather the ingredients and I'll give it a try?" She looked genuinely interested. After all, she was bored anyway. She was curious what kind of potion she could make now that the herbs would absorb traces of her soul power. When Huaiyan muttered from the side, "Let's just hope it's not another stink bomb this time." Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu froze, instantly recalling the time the entire Jingyang Palace in the imperial compound had been filled with an unbearable stench. Their expressions twitched violently. Tang Cheng shot Wen Huaiyan an annoyed glare for bringing up her black history. That was a one-time accident. You never know, I might just get lucky and make something amazing. Wen Huaiyan. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu. She's relying on luck. Seriously? Who knew what kind of disaster she might concoct next? If she ended up brewing something dangerous, the fiercely protective Marquis of Nanyang would probably skin them alive. Just the thought was enough for both of them to back down. And no need to trouble you, fourth Miss Tang, they quickly said in unison. Tang Cheng looked disappointed. There went her entertainment. As for buying ingredients herself, she hadn't even considered it. Seeing her let-down expression, Wen Huaiyan quickly changed the subject. Tang Cheng, when are you heading back? I'll take you. Tang Cheng casually kicked a small stone into the lake. No idea. Depends on what my mother decides. How about we walk around Prince Cheng's garden for a bit? Wen Huaiyan suggested with a smile. Tang Cheng shrugged. Sure. Wen Huaiyan grinned and reached for her hand, intending to lead her away. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu both twitched. Are you forgetting about us? Zhenju and Hupa. And us too. Wen Huaiyan glanced at them lazily. Didn't you say you had something urgent to attend to? Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu. Urgent? When did we ever say that? They had nothing going on. But facing Wen Huaiyan's please leave now look, they could only walk away reluctantly. Once they were gone, Wen Huaiyan's eyes flashed with satisfaction as he led Tang Cheng away from the lakeside. Peace returned to the area. No one noticed the three imposing middle-aged men standing silently in a nearby pavilion. It was cleverly positioned, offering a full view of the lakeside. Everything, including Xie Xuaning's attempt to frame Tang Cheng, had been seen clearly by all three of them. As the doting and fiercely protective father he was, the Marquis of Nanyang would never let his precious daughter suffer even the slightest grievance. Though he hadn't stepped in personally, he had asked Prince Cheng to intervene, resulting in the awkward spectacle of Xie Xuaning's schemes being completely ignored, leaving her humiliated and without a single helping hand. Many thanks for your assistance, Your Highness, the Marquis of Nanyang said, cupping his hands in a gesture of gratitude. Prince Cheng smiled. No need for thanks, Marquis. That Monsieur dared to scheme against fourth Miss Tang on my mother's birthday. I was quite angry myself. Prince Cheng had refined, handsome features, with faint crow's feet at the corners of his eyes that added a mature charm to his demeanor. After speaking, he turned with a teasing smile toward the Duke of Zhenguo. Duke, your wife seems overly fond of that Monsieur. Don't tell me there's something fishy going on. The Marquis of Nanyang joined in, smiling slyly. His Highness has a point. Duke, are you absolutely sure there's nothing wrong with the Duchess? The Duke of Zhenguo understood the implication in their words, and his expression darkened. I had people look into Lady Min recently. There's nothing suspicious. Lady Min hadn't changed much over the years, still doting on her niece, but ever since her son had that unexpected child with fourth Miss Tang, her behavior had grown increasingly strange and unpredictable. The Duke had grown wary and launched a quiet investigation, but nothing had turned up. Lady Min was indeed his son's biological mother. Prince Cheng frowned slightly, deep in thought. That's strange. The Marquis of Nanyang gently rubbed the jade ring on his finger. His daughter would be marrying into the Duke's household. This hidden threat of a mother-in-law had to be dealt with. Duke, have you looked into Monsieur's deceased mother? Her influence on the Duchess seems too great. Even the most doting aunt wouldn't go so far as to sabotage her own son repeatedly. I'm already on it, the Duke replied. But it's been over a decade. I don't know if we'll be able to uncover anything. He nodded thoughtfully. In truth, he had begun investigating Xie Xuaning and her late mother long before the Marquis had brought it up. The Marquis narrowed his eyes slightly. If there's something wrong, eventually a thread will unravel. Back at the Min estate, Xie Xuaning had no idea that both she and her mother were now under serious suspicion by the Duke of Zhenguo himself, and by midday, everything that had happened at Prince Cheng's estate during the Dowager Princess's birthday banquet had spread like wildfire across the entire capital. Xie Xuaning was infamous. Tang Cheng, even more so. Every street and alley in the capital buzzed with the same story, how fourth Miss Tang had kicked someone into a pond without a second thought. Bold, fierce, and completely unrestrained. Meanwhile, Miss Xie had become the laughingstock of the city. Her reputation in ruins, Xie Xuening hid away in the Min residence. In just a few short days, she had grown visibly haggard, looking like a delicate flower on the verge of withering. "Aunt, I don't want to be sent back to Jinling. Aunt, please. Could you beg uncle and cousin to let me stay?" The Duchess of Zhenguo's heart ached at the sight of her pitiful niece, so much so that she even had the urge to destroy Tang Cheng herself. "If you don't want to go back, then you won't. As long as I'm here, no one can force you to leave. But my reputation is ruined. Even if I stay in the capital, I'll be nothing but a laughingstock." Thinking of the way the servants in the Min household looked at her with thinly veiled disdain, Xie Xuening felt both humiliated and miserable. Tears welled up in her eyes as she choked out, "It's all that wretched fourth Miss Tang's fault. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't be in this mess. Aunt, I want justice. You must help me." Mad with rage, the Duchess of Zhenguo, Madame Min, stormed out of the room after her outburst. At Xie Xuening's signal, her maid Choju quickly slipped out to keep an eye on her. Left alone, Xie Xuening wiped away her tears. The sorrow in her eyes vanished without a trace, replaced by a cold, burning red. Hatred surged like a tide. Tang Cheng! How dare she? She was just a lowly concubine-born daughter of a marquis household, while she was the noble firstborn daughter of the prestigious Xie family of Jinling. Her status was far above Tang Cheng's. If they had been in Jinling, who would have dared treat her like this? But this was the capital, far from her family's influence. And Tang Cheng held an imperial gift in her hands. Damn her! Damn her! Absolutely damn her! All her life, backed by her powerful aunt, everyone had flattered her, fawned over her, treated her with respect. Only Tang Cheng had dared to ruin her reputation and drag her name through the mud. A flash of killing intent flickered in Xie Xuening's eyes. It didn't matter that she lacked allies in the capital. She still had her aunt. As long as she demanded it, her aunt would stop at nothing to seek justice for her. Ever since her mother died, her aunt had granted her every wish. She remembered as a child, being jealous of the attention her cousin received. She hadn't wanted to share her aunt's affection with him. So she wished her aunt would drift away from her own son. And gradually, that's exactly what happened. Over the years, her aunt grew cold toward her cousin and began treating Xuening like her own daughter. That realization had thrilled her. The only regret was how long it took years of carefully planted resentment before the shift fully happened. Xuening suspected it was because her aunt once had deep feelings for her cousin's father. That bond had made the process slower. When she was little, she had hated how her frail, sickly cousin monopolized her aunt's love. But as they both grew up, even though he remained physically weak, his features became increasingly refined and handsome. And slowly her feelings began to change. She wanted to marry him. She wanted to become the noble heir's wife. Because of her mother's death, no one ever suspected that deep down, she was terrified of childbirth. Her cousin, however, was unlikely to have children of his own, and adoption was an acceptable path for noble heirs. He was the perfect match. Even if he were to die young, as long as her aunt treated her like a daughter, she could still live a life of luxury and prestige. Xie Xuening had planned everything out perfectly, until Tang Cheng appeared and ruined it all. Tang Cheng! She ground out through clenched teeth, hatred etched in every syllable. She would make her pay. Luckily, she still had her trump card, her aunt. Her mind drifted back to a memory from 10 years ago, when she was just 6 and her dying mother spoke to her in a voice so faint it could barely be heard. "Xuening, I've arranged your future. Your aunt is the Duchess of Zhenguo. I'm entrusting you to her. She'll bring you to the capital each year. No one in the Xie family will dare mistreat you." Sob. "I don't want aunt, I want you." Even at 6, she had understood what it meant to say goodbye forever. In the vast Xie household, her father had never been reliable. Her mother was the only one she could truly depend on. "Be good, Xuening. After I'm gone, treat your aunt as if she were your mother. If you want something, just ask her. She'll do anything for you. But remember, before you ask, you must truly deeply want it. Demand it with all your heart." Xuening had never forgotten those final words. She had clung to her aunt ever since, never letting go of the power she offered. And over time, her aunt's heart had turned more and more completely toward her. Sometimes Xu Wening couldn't help but wonder, could her mother have done something before she died? How else could her aunt, who had never been close to her mother, suddenly show her such unwavering devotion? Unfortunately, her mother had taken that secret to the grave. If things had been different, even her uncle might have started favoring her by now. He was the real power behind everything. If she could win him over, she wouldn't have to fear or tiptoe around him. She could live boldly, recklessly, just like Tang Cheng. But her aunt? She fell far short. Xie Wening frowned ever so slightly, unable to hide her growing dissatisfaction. Greed stirred within her. She even found herself silently resenting her late mother. Why didn't she arrange things better? Just then her maid Choju returned, her face unusually bright. Miss, the Duchess has taken a group and gone straight to the Marquis of Nanyang's estate to demand justice for you. Xie Wening's voice was soft and eerie. Finally she went. All that time and effort spent crying in front of her aunt hadn't been in vain. Her aunt was biased toward her, yes, but only to a point. She could influence and guide her actions, but if she ever pushed her aunt to do something she resisted or found unreasonable, it was useless. That powerlessness made Xie Wening feel stifled, like her ambitions were being chained. Outside the estate, rumors ran rampant. Even the servants at the Marquis of Nanyang's residence now kept their distance from the fierce and unpredictable 4th Mississippi. The Marquis himself was unbothered by the gossip. Even when he was censured at court by censors aligned with his political enemies, accused of failing to discipline his daughter properly, he didn't care. As long as his beloved daughter wasn't wronged, nothing else mattered. In fact, he now made it a point to dine in the Peony Garden with Tang Cheng every evening, showing his unwavering support with action. As for Tang Cheng, she couldn't be bothered to feel jealous anymore. She had recently become close friends with Princess Yilin, the 4th prince's younger sister, and was too busy tending to rare and exquisite flowers to curry favor with her new ally. She had no time to worry about Tang Cheng's antics. Nor did she know that the princess consort of Prince Cheng was about to come with a marriage proposal. Madame Zhang, the Marchioness of Nanyang, ignored her husband's open favoritism. She was busy corresponding back and forth with Prince Cheng's consort. The other concubines in the household remained quiet and obedient. And so while rumors outside blazed like wildfire, within the estate, life carried on in peaceful harmony. Meanwhile, young Lord Wen visited the Marquis of Nanyang's residence every evening after court. The capital's tea-houses and taverns were buzzing with tales about him and 4th Miss Tang. The stories were vivid and elaborate, as if everyone had seen them unfold with their own eyes. The 4th prince, once relentlessly pursued by Tang Cheng, had now gracefully faded into the background. The noble ladies who had long admired young Lord Wen were devastated, but there was nothing they could do. Miss Ye's humiliating downfall was still fresh in everyone's mind. All they could do now was envy, resent, and begrudge the woman who had captured young Lord Wen's attention. 4th Miss Tang. Peony Garden Miss, the heir of the Duke of Zhenguo actually invited you to a horse race at the outskirts of the capital. Zhengguo handed over a brilliantly read invitation, her face full of disbelief. Tang Cheng had just finished a bowl of bird's nest and chicken broth congee. The moment she heard horse race, her eyes lit up. She immediately grabbed the invitation and opened it, her face glowing with delight. "I'm going," she declared without a second thought. "Miss, you're pregnant. You absolutely cannot go." All 4 maids paled in shock, rushing forward to stop her. Of course Tang Cheng knew she was carrying a child. In fact, no one cared more about that child than she did. Ever since she soaked in that body-strengthening tonic, her constitution had changed dramatically. Even vigorous activity wouldn't harm the baby. He was perfectly safe and growing strong. Still, she knew that most noble ladies in this era were delicate, and no matter what kind of fearsome reputation she had outside, she wasn't reckless enough to go racing horses while pregnant. Watching from the sidelines, however, that she could do. The 4 maids, clearly misunderstanding her intentions, reacted as if she were about to risk life and limb. Tang Cheng looked at them speechless. "You're overreacting. I'm only going to watch, not participate. Think of it like attending a social banquet." So she wasn't going to race after all. The 4 maids collectively let out a sigh of relief. Tang Cheng couldn't help twitching her lips at the sight. "Do I really seem that unreliable to you?" Silence. When had their young miss ever been reliable? The fact that she hadn't stirred up more trouble was already a small miracle. Even now, pregnant, she wasn't staying quietly at home to rest. She still wanted to go out and chase after a bit of excitement. Thankfully, the baby in her belly seemed to be blessed, safe and sound despite it all, growing steadily inside her. After sending a polite reply to the messenger from the Duke of Zhengbao's household, Tang Cheng carefully tucked the invitation away and went back to enjoying her pastries. These days she was eating for 2 and 6 meals a day still didn't feel like too much. The kitchen steward was beginning to look sideways at just how much food fourth miss could pack away. After a full meal, Tang Cheng lounged lazily on a divan while the 4 maids massaged her shoulders and legs. Their conversation meandered idly. "Miss, the rumors outside are getting out of hand. They're calling you a violent demoness who likes kicking people." Zhenguo huffed in frustration, thinking about the absurd gossip and the wary stares from the household staff. Tang Cheng raised her chin slightly, expression calm. "Why are you so surprised? I've always been a celebrity in the capital. One little stir and the whole city erupts." Zhenguo. "Miss, the point is violent demoness. That nickname is awful." Tang Cheng arched a brow, completely unfazed. "So what? Maybe with a reputation like that, no one will dare pick a fight with me again. Peace and quiet, just what I need." The 4 maids. Their young Mrs. Logic truly defied common sense. "Miss, aren't you afraid you'll scare off young Lord One?" Shanhu asked after a long silence, unable to hold it in any longer. The 4 of them already knew the Marquis's intentions. Barring any surprises, Lord One was almost certainly going to be the future son-in-law. That whole charade of gathering information on eligible young men had just been a smokescreen. The Marquis doted on his daughter and let her do as she pleased, but in truth everything was already under his control. Tang Cheng smiled lazily. When Huayan hasn't missed a single visit to the Marquis's residence. Does he look like someone who's scared off easily? Shanhu was at a loss for words. Zhenguo covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. So even Shanhu hadn't noticed yet? It wasn't their young miss chasing after Lord One. It was clearly him who was sticking to her. There might be more going on beneath the surface, but Zhenguo had noticed the way Lord One looked at their young miss. His gaze was becoming softer and more affectionate by the day. And their young miss too. She was slowly getting used to his gentle gestures and closeness. Not to mention, their young miss had one final trump card. Even if Lord One stops coming by, he can't escape anyway. Miss is carrying his child. Zhenguo grinned as she massaged Tang Cheng's legs. Once Miss starts showing, I bet the Duke of Zhenguo will send someone to drag Lord One to the altar. Dragged to the wedding by the Duke of Zhenguo. The other 3 maids imagined the ridiculous scene and couldn't help bursting into laughter. There's actually a good chance of that happening. The Duke of Zhenguo is desperate for an heir. He'd never let his own flesh and blood be left out in the cold. Ling Long chimed in with a chuckle. Exactly. Exactly. Miss, you might as well just marry young Lord One. Shanhu and Amber added eagerly, nodding in agreement. The 4 maids seemed to already envision the grand wedding where their young miss would be married off in splendor to the Duke of Zhenguo's household. Just then, a sudden shrill voice interrupted their daydream. From the birdcage under the eaves by the window, the usually quiet little parrot, Anen squawked loudly. Master Mary! Mary! The corners of Tang Cheng's mouth twitched in speechless exasperation. This was getting more and more ridiculous. Even the parrot was joining in on the nonsense now. The 4 maids burst into laughter, unable to hold it in after the bird's unexpected interjection. At that moment, a matron entered the room and respectfully informed her. 4th Miss, the Duchess of Zhenguo is here. Tang Cheng's expression turned a little strange. It had been several days since she kicked Xie Xuaning into the water, and yet the Duchess of Zhenguo household hadn't made a single move. Tang Cheng had been sorely disappointed, until now. And now that she was suddenly paying a visit, was she here to settle scores? Tang Cheng couldn't help but feel a spark of anticipation. Life had been far too dull lately. A bit of drama was exactly what she needed. Since the Duchess of Zhenguo's household had come knocking, Tang Cheng decided she might as well go meet her. Where is she now? The old maid who had come to report quickly and respectfully replied. At the front gates of the Marquis's residence. The Marquis ordered that the Duchess of Zhenguo's household not be allowed to disturb you, Mississippi. Tang Cheng looked the maid over with amused interest. The woman looked neat and composed, probably in her early 40s. Oh! Tang Cheng raised an eyebrow. Since my father specifically forbade the madam from disturbing me, why are you disobeying him? Without missing a beat, the maid pulled a gleaming gold ingot from her sleeve and grinned. Because the madam bribed me, miss. Tang Cheng couldn't help but laugh as she stared at the golden ingot. This maid was something else, so bold and forthright about accepting bribes. Aren't you afraid I'll be angry? The maid calmly replied. I know the fourth young miss isn't the type to lash out at her servants without reason. Tang Cheng's 4 personal maids. They all exchanged odd glances at the woman, but Tang Cheng found her very much to her liking. Straightforward, amusing, and even a bit refreshing. Not to mention she had a pleasant face. She asked with rising curiosity, What's your name? Which courtyard are you from? The old maid's eyes lit up and she quickly replied, This servant is Yang Tohua, a cleaning maid from Peony Courtyard. Fourth miss may call me Granny Yang. Tang Cheng waved her hand grandly. From now on you'll serve at my side. You'll receive the second-tier servant's monthly stipend. Granny Yang beamed with delight. Thank you for your kindness, miss. The 4 personal maids twitched at the corners of their mouths. Was it really wise for their lady to so casually let an unfamiliar maid into her inner circle? All right, let's go meet the Duchess of Zhenguo's household, Tang Cheng said. Granny Yang, you're coming too, and you can keep that gold ingot. After adjusting her appearance, Tang Cheng set out from the Peony Courtyard with her 4 maids and Granny Yang in tow. As for Granny Yang, Tang Cheng wasn't worried. She trusted her father, the Marquis, would do a thorough background check once he found out. There was no need for her to concern herself. The moment the servants of the Marquis's residence saw fourth miss heading toward the front gates, they immediately guessed her destination. Word spread like wildfire. The fourth miss was going to see the Duchess of Zhenguo, who'd been stubbornly waiting at the gate, refusing to leave without meeting her. Soon, everyone in the residence had heard the news and began sending people to observe. Tang Cheng had been invited out by Princess Yilin, and was unaware of the commotion. The Marchioness of Nanyang, Madame Zhang, remained unfazed when she heard the news. Whatever that fourth girl wanted to do, let her do it. After all, the fourth girl was never one to suffer losses. Outside the grand gates of the Nanyang Marquis's residence stood a luxurious carriage. Not far off, a few idle young masters and curious house servants had gathered to watch the scene unfold. Inside the carriage, the Duchess of Zhenguo sat with a dark expression. She snapped. What's going on with that greedy old woman? Did she take the bribe and do nothing? Why hasn't fourth Miss Tang come out yet? Her trusted maid quickly poured her a cup of tea. Please calm yourself, madam. You know what the fourth miss is like. She may well be keeping you waiting on purpose. Humph, the madam snorted. That's just like her. Only that ill-bred fourth Miss Tang would pull something like this. The trusted maid stayed silent, sighing inwardly. Miss Ye's influence on the madam was far too strong, and the madam was far too invested in her. If she hadn't always chosen to counsel the madam privately, she would have already been dismissed like the other 2 maids. That was how she had managed to remain the madam's closest confidant. Fortunately, Miss Ye had no idea. This time she had only just managed to calm the madam down, when Miss Ye said a few words and stirred her up again, enough to make her storm over here to confront fourth Miss Tang. The trusted maid nearly coughed up blood from frustration. Hadn't the madam embarrassed herself enough? Madam, she said carefully, fourth miss has a wild and unpredictable temper. She might just lash out at you if provoked. The madam's expression faltered. For a moment she seemed to hesitate, but the moment she thought of her poor, miserable Xuening, her face hardened again. Let her try. The maid gave a bitter smile. Is there anything she wouldn't dare to do? Forgive me for speaking bluntly, madam, but it's the truth. His lordship has been showing the fourth miss endless favor, yet she remains indifferent. If even he can't sway her, do you think she'll care about saving face for you? Madam, let's go back. She had said that deliberately, hoping to convince the madam to leave. There was no benefit in confronting fourth Miss Tang. Doing so would only tarnish her reputation and drag her status through the mud. The madam's face darkened further. Yes, that fourth Miss Tang was a disrespectful wretch. She was capable of anything. She recalled the moment fourth Miss Tang kicked Xuening. For a brief second, the madam felt she might have acted rashly. But then she thought of Xuening's pitiful state again. No, we can't go back. I have to seek justice for Xuening. The madam, whose resolve had just begun to waver, hardened once more. The trusted maid's gaze dimmed. She had failed again. Miss Ye was nothing but a curse. If not for her, the madam and the heir wouldn't have grown apart. The madam wouldn't have been sent back to her maiden family by the Duke. Though she wasn't officially divorced, it was only out of consideration for the heir's feelings. How could the madam be so blind? She used to be graceful and dignified. A true role model of a noblewoman. Everyone admired her. But ever since Miss Ye began her annual visits to the Duke's household, the madam had changed. She no longer cared about the heir, dismissed one confidant after another, and even tried to meddle with the heir's attendants, causing him to nearly lose his life twice. In the end, the Duke himself had to intervene, moving the heir to the front courtyard and posting guards to keep the madam from interfering again. Just what kind of poison had Miss Ye fed her? If this went on any longer, the Duke might really divorce the madam. A flicker of worry crossed the trusted maid's eyes. Just then, the crimson gates of the Nanyang Marquis's residence creaked open. And there she was, Tang Cheng's striking, confident face appeared before the crowd. Fourth Miss Tang. The moment the Duchess of Zhenguo saw her, her well-maintained face darkened instantly. She yanked aside the carriage curtain and stepped down without hesitation. Her trusted maid gave a resigned smile and quickly followed. Not far away, the loafing young masters and house servants who had nearly dozed off waiting for the show perked up immediately. Things were about to get interesting. Fourth Miss Tang, you finally dragged yourself out here. Now get over to the Min residence, kneel, and apologize to Xuening. The Duchess of Zhenguo glared furiously at Tang Cheng, who emerged flanked by her four maids. Tang Cheng met her gaze with a half-smile. Duchess of Zhenguo, it's only been a few days, but you already look several years older. Looks like life in the Min household hasn't been kind to you. You've worn yourself out over your niece. Poor Lord One, having a mother like you. No wonder the Duke sent you back to your maiden home. She didn't bother being polite. Since the madam came in full hostility, Tang Cheng responded in kind. And she didn't just fight back. She went straight for the jugular. Kneel and apologize? Dream on. The four maids, Granny Yang. Their fourth miss really had a talent for infuriating people. You insolent wretch. Is this how the Marquis of Nanyang taught you to treat your elders? The Duchess of Zhenguo shouted, trembling with rage. Her eyes were practically spitting fire as she glared at Tang Cheng. Tang Cheng was thoroughly enjoying the sight of the Duchess of Zhenguo seething with rage, though she blinked innocently on the surface. Duchess, that's not a fair accusation. I've been looking at you this whole time. Can't you see my eyes are filled with nothing but your image? How is that disrespecting my elders? She turned to her maid. Zhenju, don't you agree? Zhenju held back a laugh, stepped closer, and made a show of peering into her mistress's eyes before solemnly nodding. Indeed, Duchess, the young miss has you in her eyes. Tang Cheng gave the madam a sideways glance and smiled sweetly. You hear that, Duchess? Maybe next time think twice before you speak. And besides, how my father raised me is none of your business. You really do like meddling, don't you? Instead of worrying about me, why don't you teach your precious niece Miss Ye to act like a decent human being, and stop using cheap tricks to harm others? And you want me to kneel and apologize? Does she even deserve it? I have a special decree from His Majesty. I'm exempt from kneeling. You. The Duchess of Zhenguo trembled all over, pointing at Tang Cheng but completely speechless with fury. Her trusted maid was stunned. She hadn't expected fourth Miss Tang to come armed with so many twisted arguments, and what's worse, they worked. The madam didn't stand a chance in this verbal battle. One side was calm and cheeky, the other was red-eyed with rage. From the moment they met, the lady had been utterly steamrolled by Tang Cheng's momentum. The maid grew more and more worried. Meanwhile, the bystanders, young dandies and servants who had gathered for the spectacle, nearly dropped their jaws. This was considered disrespecting elders? What kind of nonsense logic was this? Well, they had to admit they learned something new today. Their eyes lit up. Fourth Miss Tang never disappointed. She came out and immediately went head-to-head with the Duchess of Zhenguo. Impressive. Madam, anger harms the body, please calm yourself, the maid urged, quickly stepping forward to support the lady as she faltered. How am I supposed to calm down? The Duchess snapped. If not for fourth Miss Tang, would I be in this disgraceful situation? One humiliation after another. Recent events had turned her, a dignified noblewoman, into the butt of every joke. And in her mind, Tang Cheng was the root cause of it all. At this point, the Duchess was so blinded by fury that she'd completely forgotten why she'd come in the first place. Now that she was away from Xie Xuaning's influence, her obsession with status and dignity surged back to the forefront, especially under Tang Cheng's relentless provocations. Tang Cheng, utterly unaware of this shift, was beginning to get annoyed herself. How the Duchess ended up like this was her own doing. What did that have to do with her? She had no intention of taking the blame. Duchess, I'd appreciate it if you stopped making baseless accusations. You're the one who's been hounding me over and over, showing none of the grace or tolerance expected of a noblewoman. You see only your precious niece Miss Xia, while ignoring your own son Lord Wan and the interests of the entire Duke's household. The Duke already showed mercy by merely sending you back to your maiden family. And now, the once esteemed Duchess of Zhenguo lowers herself to come after a junior like me, over some scheming little niece? Aren't you ashamed? You've already become a laughingstock. The four maids, Granny Yang, the loafing onlookers. Duchess, wife of Duke Zhenguo, was left gasping after Tang Cheng's fierce, unrelenting tirade. Her lips trembled. Her finger pointed at Tang Cheng, but still no words came. Her chest heaved violently, until a bitter metallic taste surged up her throat. Pfft! She suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. A mouthful of blood sprayed out. Overwhelmed by rage and humiliation, the Duchess of Zhenguo collapsed in a dead faint, her vision going black the moment the blood left her lips. Madam! Her trusted maid turned pale with panic and shouted in alarm, quickly ordering the coachman to return to the Min residence at once. Tang Cheng, the four maids and Granny Yang, the nearby spectators, everyone was completely stunned. The mighty Duchess of Zhenguo had been so infuriated by a few blunt truths from Miss Tang that she literally spat blood and passed out. Everyone watched in stunned silence as the ornate carriage sped away, vanishing around the corner of the street. For a long moment no one spoke. Miss, the Duchess of Zhenguo spat blood. Do you think young Lord Wan might? Zhenju trailed off, but everyone understood what she meant. I don't know, Tang Cheng said with a touch of guilt. It's not like I did it on purpose. How was I supposed to know she had such a fragile temper? She hadn't expected things to end like that. The four personal maids all looked uneasy. No matter what, the Duchess was still Lord Wen's mother. If this incident created a rift between their miss and Wen Huaiyan, forget it, Tang Cheng said breezily. If the enemy comes, we'll fight them. If the water rises, we'll build a dam. Let's head back to the courtyard. She remained cheerful. Right now, she only had a favorable impression of Wen Huaiyan. He was simply her top candidate for a future husband. But if he grew distant because of this incident with his mother, she wouldn't force it. In fact, she quietly struck his name from her mental list of marriage prospects. By the time Tang Cheng returned to the peony courtyard with her maids and Granny Yang, the idling young masters and household servants lurking outside the Nanyang Marquis' residence had already started spreading the news far and wide. The Duchess of Zhenguo had fainted and spat blood after a few sharp words from fourth Miss Tang Miss. Following Miss Xie's recent drama, the Duchess now found herself trending in the gossip circuit, dragging Tang Cheng's name right along with her. As for fourth Miss Tang's outrageous antics, everyone was long used to them. Each time she stirred up a mess, it just became the latest mealtime entertainment. But the Duchess of Zhenguo? Now she was interesting. Her situation made for far more compelling conversation. The noble ladies who secretly admired Wen Huaiyan were quietly delighted. If Tang Cheng was bold enough to enrage his mother to the point of collapse, dreaming of marrying him was pure fantasy. Rumors spread like wildfire. When the emperor heard about it in the palace, the corner of his mouth twitched. Fourth Miss Tang had once again shattered his expectations. For a moment, he truly wondered whether the Duke still wanted Tang Cheng as his future daughter-in-law. As it happened, the Duke of Zhenguo was already thinking about her. When news of the incident reached him, He frowned slightly and immediately ordered Tang Ping to summon an imperial physician to the Min residence to check on Madame Min's condition. Then, he called in the secret guard he'd placed beside Xie Xuening to spy and had him report what had really happened. After hearing the full story, his eyes narrowed dangerously. This niece of the Min family. Clearly a serious problem. Several days had passed, and the investigation report on her and her mother should be arriving in the capital soon. The Duke of Zhenguo sat in silence, his expression dark, fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk. Meanwhile, Wen Huaiyan had already heard the news that his mother had gone to confront Tang Cheng, only to be angered into unconsciousness after a few sharp words. Though shocked, a trace of concern stirred in his heart. Still, he didn't blame Tang Cheng for lacking restraint. From what he'd heard, her words hadn't been out of line. It was his mother who had pushed things too far. As soon as he left court, Wen Huaiyan rushed toward the Min residence, only to run into the imperial physician summoned by Tang Ping on the way. The servants at the Min residence quickly led him and the physician to Madame Min's courtyard. By then, the Duchess of Zhenguo had already regained consciousness. Her face was pale, her breath weak. Xie Xuening sat by her side, softly comforting her, her face full of remorse and self-blame. "Aunt, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have gone to see forth Miss Tang. None of this would have happened." As she spoke, tears welled in her eyes and slid down her cheeks. Madame Min looked at her tearful niece with deep affection. She reached over and gently patted her hand. "How could this be your fault? If Tang Cheng hadn't pushed me again and again, I wouldn't have been so agitated. At least now, you can use this matter as a reason to stay in the capital." A flash of coldness flickered in Madame Min's eyes as she pushed all the blame onto Tang Cheng. Her trusted maid stood silently to the side, numb with resignation. As expected, as long as this young lady shed a few tears and showed a little guilt, the madame's heart would soften completely. Xie Xuening, head lowered and eyes wet, was secretly delighted. Her uncle and cousin had been planning to send her back to Jinling, and even her aunt's pleas hadn't been able to stop it, let alone the Min family, who had no intention of keeping her. But now, with her aunt's collapse, she had the perfect excuse to stay. That meant she had to act fast. As long as her cousin continued to visit the Min residence, and with her aunt's cooperation, there was no way she wouldn't be able to win him over. Xie Xuening was still dreaming of her future when Wen Huaiyan arrived. The moment he stepped into the courtyard, he saw his pale-faced mother gently consoling his weeping cousin. He arrived just in time to hear his mother mention letting Xuening stay in the capital. Wen Huaiyan's expression darkened. "Mother!" Xie Xuening's heart skipped. Hearing that deep, familiar voice, she quickly looked up, her eyes sparkling. "Cousin, you're here." But Wen Huaiyan didn't spare her a glance. He walked straight over to his mother with the physician in tow. "Mother, father sent Imperial Physician Chen from the palace to check on you." "Physician Chen, thank you for coming." Hearing that the Duke himself had sent a physician for her, Madame Min felt a rush of joy, but it was tinged with bitterness. She was glad he still cared, but disheartened that he hadn't allowed her to return to the Duke's household. Imperial Physician Chen, well aware of the political undercurrents in the Duke's household, said nothing. He simply took her pulse, wrote a prescription, and instructed her to rest quietly for the time being before taking his leave. After he was gone, Madame Min turned her stern gaze on her son. With a cold, clipped tone she said, "Huaiyan, you must cut ties with Tang Cheng. I forbid you from seeing her again. If you don't, then you are being unfilial." From the side, Xie Xuening's lips curved in a barely noticeable smile. The trusted maid, who had been standing like a shadow in the corner, let out a silent sigh. "Here we go again." Wen Huaiyan frowned slightly. His mother was once again using filial piety as a weapon against him. "Mother, please take care of your health. We can talk about everything else later." Madame Min, seeing her son still refusing to break things off with Tang Cheng, felt her anger rise again. "Wen Huaiyan, don't play dumb with me. I said I won't allow you to have anything more to do with Tang Cheng. Did you hear me?" Xie Xuening suppressed the jealousy bubbling in her chest. Her beautiful eyes fixed on her cousin's handsome face as she bit her lip and asked accusingly, "Cousin, the physician said aunt must avoid agitation. Why not just agree to her request? Or, is fourth Miss Tang more important to you than your own mother? Wen Huaiyan cast her a cold glance, then turned to his mother with a calm expression. Mother, I can promise not to see Tang Cheng for now. Please focus on your recovery. I have official matters to attend to. I'll take my leave. With that he turned and left. To avoid upsetting his mother further, he decided that starting tomorrow, he would no longer visit the Marquis of Nanyang's residence. The Duchess of Zhenguo was still not fully satisfied, but since her son had at least agreed to stay away from Tang Cheng for the time being, she didn't press the matter further. Xie Xuaning's eyes darkened with quiet displeasure. Duke of Zhenguo's estate, study room. The Duke and his son Wen Huaiyan sat together in the study, poring over the report delivered by the secret guards. Their two similar, strikingly handsome faces gradually hardened, their expressions turning cold and grim. Tang Ping, bring in Sun Zhu and that Miao woman, the Duke commanded, his tone icy and his face like stone. Yes, Lord. Tang Ping left the study and soon returned with two people. Sun Zhu was the son of the late Madame Xie's most trusted maid. Miao Pa was from the southern Miao tribe, known for her skill in witchcraft and goo poison. The moment he entered, Sun Zhu dropped to his knees, trembling violently. Why, your grace? Cold sweat soaked his back. He had feared this day for 10 years, and now it had finally come. The truth could not stay buried forever. What Madame Xie had done back then had finally been exposed. Sun Zhu's mother, the loyal maid of the late Madame Xie, had known that she would not live long once her mistress died. Before her death, she had secretly told her son the truth, that the Duchess and Miss Xie had been cursed with a heart-linking goo. Xie Xuaning carried the mother goo, while the Duchess bore the child goo. Since Xuaning had been too young at the time, the goo's influence hadn't taken full effect. To reinforce it, Madame Xie had even hired a Taoist skilled in hypnosis to implant a false memory in the Duchess, one of guilt and remorse, as though she owed a deep debt to Madame Xie. Sun Zhu also knew that the pair of heart-linking goo worms had originally been prepared for Madame Xie herself, but after falling victim to a scheme from another woman in the household and barely surviving, her days were numbered. With her plans ruined and time running out, she decided not to let the goo go to waste. Instead, she used them to pave a future for her daughter, by binding the powerful Duchess of Zhenguo to her. Miao Pa had long heard tales of the formidable Duke of Zhenguo, a legendary figure throughout Great Zhou. She had never imagined that one day she would be summoned to stand before him in person. All because of the heart-linking goo she had gifted away 10 years ago. Duke Zhenguo and Wen Huaiyan began interrogating Sun Zhu. Though they had mentally prepared themselves for the worst, the truth they pried out of him still left both father and son deeply angered. The only small relief, there was a cure. Miao Pa confirmed she could extract the goo. Once Tang Ping led the two away, silence fell over the study. They had finally uncovered the reason behind the Duchess's change in behavior. But the damage had already been done. 10 years of subtle influence had driven a wedge between mother and son that no cure could fully erase. Even if the goo was removed, she would never return to the woman she once was. The bond between them had been irreparably altered. A sense of relief mingled with bitter regret in Wen Huaiyan's heart. The Duke's gaze grew darker. After confirming his son's stance, he began reconsidering his position on Madame Min. As for Xie Xuaning, once the goo worm was extracted, she would be forcibly sent back to Jinling. Without the protection of the Duke Zhenguo's estate and with her maternal family, the Mins indifferent toward her, her future was easy to predict. The night was cool as water, and the world lay silent. A dark figure, swift and agile, scaled the wall of the Marquis of Nanyang's estate. With practiced ease, he slipped into the familiar grounds of the peony courtyard. Inside, Tang Cheng was just about to fall asleep when she suddenly heard a faint sound by the window. Who's there? It's me, Tang Cheng. Hearing the familiar voice, she opened the window, only to see Wen Huaiyan dressed in all black, standing outside her room. Her forehead creased in disbelief. He had actually sneaked into her boudoir in the dead of night? More shocking, no one had noticed. The peony courtyard clearly needed tighter security. Even the little parrot under the eaves didn't squawk. Wen Huaiyan, what are you doing here? Wen Huaiyan climbed in through the window. Under the soft flicker of candlelight, his eyes fell on Tang Cheng, her hair loose, her inner robe only half-tied, her graceful figure faintly outlined in the dim light. His ears flushed red. I came to see you. Tang Cheng lifted her chin slightly. Not here to scold me? He shook his head. No, she raised an eyebrow. Then are you here to steal a kiss? Steal a kiss? That made him sound like some common rogue. Wen Huayan's lips twitched. Somehow the words left his mouth before he could stop them. If I said yes, would you let me? Tang Cheng turned away. Keep dreaming. Wen Huayan. He had expected that. Better get to the point. I came to tell you that I won't be visiting for the next few days, he said seriously. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not giving up on you. I just promised my mother I wouldn't see you for now. Tang Cheng blinked. You're not mad at me? After these past few days together, Wen Huayan felt he had come to understand her fairly well. It's not your fault. No one could have predicted that my mother would cough up blood so suddenly. There's nothing to blame you for. She was genuinely touched. His attitude, his reasonableness, it all left her unexpectedly pleased. In her mind, he was once again promoted to the top of her ideal husband list. I'm heading back now, Wen Huayan said. Before leaving, he pulled her into a quick hug. As if by accident, his large hand brushed lightly across her waist. Then he leapt back out the window. Tang Cheng. But the moment Wen Huayan stepped out of the peony courtyard, he was met with a tall, imposing figure. Looking up, he froze. Standing there in the moonlight, expressionless and cold, was none other than the Marquis of Nanyang. Wen Huayan. Why was his future father-in-law here? Was it just a coincidence, or had he been waiting for him on purpose? Wen Huayan froze. Just moments ago, after effortlessly avoiding the Marquis Manor's guards and scaling the wall into the Nanyang Marquis' residence, he had secretly marveled at how lax the security was. He hadn't expected this. Lord Wen, the Marquis of Nanyang said with a half-smile, his gaze sweeping over Wen Huayan's all-black attire. Sneaking into a young lady's chambers in the dead of night, relying on your martial arts skills, hardly the act of a gentleman. Ever since the boy started using body-enhancing tonics and recovered from his ailments, he'd been practicing martial arts for just over 2 weeks. And now, his courage had grown enough to dare break into his precious daughter's room at night. Caught red-handed, Wen Huayan flushed with embarrassment. He quickly cupped his fists in a respectful salute. Greetings, Marquis. I lost my head for a moment and trespassed. I ask for your forgiveness. At least he admitted his fault without hesitation. The Marquis gave a cold snort. Since your martial arts are so formidable that you move through my estate as if it were unguarded, why not spar with the head of my guards? As soon as he finished speaking, a tall, broad-shouldered guard with a steely expression stepped silently out from the shadows. Clearly a master. Wen Huayan. So this was the trap. No wonder he'd made it to the peony garden so easily. Whatever pride he had instantly crumbled. You should count yourself lucky, the Marquis said, eyeing him from head to toe, his smile turning cold, that you didn't linger too long in my daughter's room. Otherwise what? Wen Huayan didn't dare think too far. He silently thanked the heavens that he hadn't stayed longer. Future father-in-law was seriously tough to deal with. Let's go, off to the training grounds for a little match. The Marquis stared him down, while the guard captain glared at him like a predator sizing up its prey. It was clear that if Wen Huayan didn't agree, they'd drag him there by force. All right. Wen Huayan's lips twitched, but he followed them to the training grounds. Their figures disappeared into the darkness. No one noticed the slim silhouette hidden nearby, eavesdropping from the shadows. Training grounds? A spar? The figure turned and slipped back into the house, the candlelight revealing a fair, beautiful face tinged with excitement. It was Tang Cheng. She quickly changed into a dark outfit, tying her hair up casually with a ribbon before leaving the peony garden with a light, effortless air. At first, Tang Cheng had thought the guards around the Marquis Manor, and especially those stationed at her peony garden, were just incompetent. But later she realized something was off. It was almost as if someone had let Wen Huayan through on purpose. Curious, she had quietly followed him, only to witness her father lying in wait to catch him red-handed. How could she not realize her father had noticed Wen Huayan long ago, and was just waiting to make his move? Poor Wen Huayan. Tang Cheng spared him a second of sympathy, just one, before happily preparing to enjoy the show. Humming to herself, she made her way lightly toward the training grounds. The guards stationed outside the peony garden pretended not to see the fourth miss sneaking off. When Huaiyan followed the Marquis of Nanyang to the training field, only to be greeted by a brightly lit arena. Lanterns hung all around, turning night into day, and a group of guards was already assembled, clearly waiting. Everything had been meticulously prepared. This was no spur-of-the-moment decision. When Huaiyan's lips twitched, so his future father-in-law had likely known the moment he climbed over the wall, and had been lying in wait, ready to teach him a lesson. "Lord One, please step onto the platform," the head guard said respectfully, gesturing toward the stage before leaping up himself with practiced ease. When Huaiyan's expression grew serious, though he'd only trained for about 2 weeks, his body had been enhanced by strength-boosting medicine. He might not be on par with the head guard yet, but he wasn't without a fighting chance either. Without hesitation, he jumped onto the platform. By now Tang Cheng had arrived. Her eyes immediately locked onto the tall, upright figure on the stage. The surrounding guards quickly bowed. Fourth miss. When Huaiyan, who hadn't started sparring yet, looked surprised to see Tang Cheng. His gaze wavered awkwardly. Caught by her father while sneaking into her room, what a humiliation. The Marquis of Nanyang noticed his daughter's eyes glued to that rascal and couldn't help but clear his throat. "Chenger, what are you doing here?" "Father, how could I miss out on something this exciting?" she replied cheerfully, finally tearing her gaze away. Exciting? Was she here to watch Wen Huaiyan get beaten up? The Marquis. He gave Wen Huaiyan a silent moment of pity, then turned to the two on stage with a pleased grin. "Begin." As soon as he gave the command, the two fighters clashed. The head guard struck swiftly, so fast that spectators couldn't help but feel nervous for Wen Huaiyan. But Wen wasn't slow either. He dodged the punch by a hair and even managed to counterattack. Back and forth they went, fists flying like the wind, the match intense and fast-paced. Tang Cheng stared without blinking, blood pumping with excitement. Her small fists clenched, her pretty face flushed with eagerness. "I really want to go up there and fight too." The Marquis. His precious daughter was becoming more violent by the day, not a bad thing actually. He made a mental note to collect more martial arts manuals, so she could resume training after having children. Watching Wen Huaiyan go toe-to-toe with the head guard without being overwhelmed, the Marquis squinted suspiciously, and almost burst out laughing. Those two were putting on an act. This is so entertaining. If only I had some sunflower seeds, I'd be snacking while I watched, Tang Cheng muttered. The Marquis's lips twitched. His daughter had hit the nail on the head. This wasn't a real match. That cunning brat must have struck some kind of deal with the head guard, right under his nose. No wonder Wen Huaiyan didn't look the least bit flustered and even seemed to be holding back. The Marquis of Nanyang let out a cold snort. "Chunming, show your true strength." On the platform, the two fighters who had been exchanging flashy moves froze and exchanged glances. They'd been found out. Wen Huaiyan tensed. The head guard, Chunming, gave a sharp shout. "Apologies, Lord One." With that, his entire demeanor shifted. His strikes became sharper, faster, and far more aggressive. Moments later, Wen Huaiyan was sent flying off the platform with a single punch. Smack! He landed flat on his back, looking utterly disheveled. The Marquis's lips curled into a smile, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Now that was what he called a proper sparring match. Tang Cheng. She walked over and looked down at Wen Huaiyan, who, despite his sorry state, still managed to look handsome. After a pause, she muttered curiously, "A paper tiger? No, wait, you took those strength-enhancing tonics. Shouldn't you be tougher than this?" She frowned, visibly puzzled. Still lying on the ground and now being suspected of being all looks and no durability, Wen Huaiyan's handsome face darkened. He didn't feel like responding. Seeing his blackened expression, Tang Cheng suddenly remembered. Someone of his noble status had probably never been beaten to the ground before. Poor guy. She looked at him with a face full of sympathy and asked, "Need a hand?" Wen Huaiyan's eyes flickered. With the Marquis still watching, he reached a hand out toward Tang Cheng. "Please." Tang Cheng didn't hesitate. She took his hand and pulled him up. As Wen Huaiyan stood, he stumbled slightly and fell against her slender, soft frame. His lips accidentally brushed her cheek in the process. "Sorry." I lost my balance. He quickly straightened up, offering her an apologetic smile tinged with weakness. Tang Cheng didn't seem bothered by the brief contact. In fact, she looked at him with even more pity. No need to apologize. I know you didn't do it on purpose. Still, I didn't expect you to get hit that hard. You can't even stand properly. You're a little weak, huh? She added seriously. Never mind, you can lean on my shoulder if you need to. Wen Huaiyan. Honestly, he wasn't that weak. Chen Ming had held back. His punches looked brutal but were actually well controlled. Wen Huaiyan's body only ached a little. Nothing serious. But with the Marquis watching, he had to act like he'd been thoroughly beaten. Hearing Tang Cheng offer her shoulder, Wen Huaiyan couldn't help but smile. He leaned into her naturally. A light fresh fragrance drifted into his nose. Suddenly, Wen Huaiyan didn't think getting beaten up was such a bad thing after all. Not far off, Chen Ming, the head guard, had just arrived and happened to witness Wen Huaiyan shamelessly leaning against the fourth miss, making his lips twitched. Seriously, Lord Wen? He knew he hadn't hit hard enough to knock the guy off balance. Meanwhile, the Marquis of Nanyang approached, face dark and expression unfriendly as he cast a sharp look at Wen Huaiyan. How dare he shamelessly take advantage of his daughter right in front of him? Chen Ming, escort Lord Wen back to his estate. Yes, my lord. The head guard Chen Ming replied respectfully, turning to stare directly at Wen Huaiyan. Wen Huaiyan. With clear reluctance he bid farewell to Tang Cheng. She waved at him cheerfully. Go back and train harder. Don't get beaten up so badly next time. Wen Huaiyan. What happened at the Marquis of Nanyang's residence that night was never made public. However, the next day after court, the Duke of Zhenguo heard the full story directly from the Marquis himself. The Duke. If he remembered correctly, his son had been training at the estate's martial grounds that very morning, looking nothing like someone who'd just taken a serious beating. The Marquis of Nanyang had clearly been fooled by the boy's performance. The Duke wisely chose to remain silent. After all, sneaking into the Marquis's residence at night, getting caught and then beaten, what a humiliating mess. Later that day, back at the Duke's estate, he and Wen Huaiyan ordered their men to secretly abduct the Duchess and Xie Xuening, rendering them unconscious and bringing them back to the manor. When the two women awoke, they were stunned to find themselves in a room with the Duke of Zhenguo and his son, both wearing expressionless faces, along with Tang Ping and an unfamiliar elderly woman. Madam Min, take a look at this. The Duke motioned for Tang Ping to hand over the investigation file they had compiled. Madam Min took it with a puzzled expression, but the more she read, the darker her face grew. No, this can't be true. You're lying to me. Xie Xuening, alarmed by her aunt's strange reaction, suddenly had a bad feeling. A creeping sense of dread told her this was all aimed at her. Mother, it's true, Wen Huaiyan said coldly. You've been affected by the heart-linking goo. That's why you've been so easily influenced by cousin. Heart-linking goo? Xie Xuening's eyes widened. She suddenly remembered the regret her mother had expressed before her death. Her pupils constricted sharply. No wonder her aunt had acted so strangely. Before she could react further, Tang Ping struck her unconscious. What are you trying to do to Xuening? The Duchess cried, instinctively moving to shield her niece, only to abruptly pull her hand back as if realizing something. Mistress Miao, draw out the parent goo from Miss Ye's body, Wen Huaiyan ordered coldly as he looked at the unconscious girl. As for his mother, being fooled and manipulated by someone for 10 years, her refusal to accept the truth was understandable. Mistress Miao made a small incision on Xie Xuening's pale arm. She took out a thumb-sized wooden jar, removed the stopper, and placed it over the wound. A strange foul odor drifted through the air. Moments later, something began to squirm beneath her skin. Then, a small insect wriggled out of the cut and crawled straight into the jar. The Duchess of Zhenguo felt a chill run through her body. The thought that a creature like that had been inside her made her face go pale. A wave of nausea surged up in her chest. When Mistress Miao drew out a second goo worm from her arm, whatever affection she had once felt for Xie Xuening instantly faded. More than half of it gone, replaced by a creeping sense of disgust. She could no longer lie to herself. She had, without a doubt, been manipulated by the sister who had died 10 years ago. For the sake of a niece, she had pushed away her own husband and son, been sent back to her maiden home in disgrace, and become the laughingstock of high society. For someone as proud as the Duchess, it was a reality too bitter to accept. The most urgent thing now was to return to the Zhenguo Duke's estate, and begin mending her relationship with her husband and son. Tang Ping quietly escorted Mistress Miao out, leaving only the 3 family members behind. When Huaiyan stood in silence, watching his mother with unreadable eyes, she was now looking at the unconscious Xie Xuening with a mixture of revulsion and hatred. Turning to her husband, she wept and confessed her wrongdoings, begging for forgiveness. She pushed all the blame onto her late sister and niece, claiming she'd been deceived. The Duke's face remained impassive. This awakened version of his mother felt like a stranger to Wen Huaiyan. A heaviness settled in his chest. He didn't want to stay here any longer. "Father, Mother, I'll return to my quarters now." The Duke gave a slight nod. All right. The change in his wife had been drastic. He knew it would be difficult for their son to accept. The Duchess, however, was inwardly resentful over her son's sudden departure. Was he still holding a grudge against his mother? Still, that could wait. Winning back her husband's trust was the priority now. Her relationship with her son could be dealt with later. It was a fine plan on paper. But reality dealt the Duchess of Zhenguo a harsh blow. When Xie Xuening woke up, she was already on the road back to the Xie family in Jinling. Everything had been settled. As for the Duchess, the Duke of Zhenguo sent her to a well-known temple on the outskirts of the capital, where she would take vows and live as a lay devotee, praying for her son's health and future. When the news spread, the capital was in an uproar. The Duchess of Zhenguo, who had previously collapsed from anger and vomited blood, had now suddenly decided to take vows at a temple to pray for Lord Wen's health and fertility. The explosive news hit society like a thunderclap, leaving everyone stunned and speechless. Rumors ran rampant. The ladies of the Min family were flooded with invitation cards. Everyone wanted a chance to probe for inside information, hoping to get a clearer picture. Even the emperor couldn't resist summoning the Duke of Zhenguo to the palace for questioning. The whole capital was in an uproar. And the number of noble ladies wanting to marry Lord Wen? It had just doubled. Tang Cheng, after her initial shock, sat comfortably stroking her still flat belly, humming in annoyance. Is there really any need to pray to the gods at a temple for an heir? She only needs to ask me. She was, after all, blessed with a naturally fertile body. Having a whole litter of children would be no problem. In fact, when Huaiyan's child was already growing safely inside her belly, Tang Cheng accidentally muttered this last part out loud. Zhenju, standing nearby, was frozen with a full head of dark lines. Against her will, an image popped into her mind, of the solemn Duchess of Zhenguo bowing reverently before her mistress, begging for a grandson. She shuddered violently. Terrifying. Why would she even think something like that? The other 3 maids also twitched at the corners of their mouths. "Miss," Hoopa said faintly, "have you forgotten? The whole capital thinks you already had a miscarriage." So really, it made perfect sense for the Duchess of Zhenguo to be praying at a temple for Lord Wen to have an heir. Tang Cheng. Fine. She had indeed forgotten about that part. But the truth would come out in a few months anyway. She couldn't help but wonder how Wen Huaiyan would react when it did. The thought made her feel a little uneasy. Meanwhile, Lu Jintong of the Marquis of Jiannan's household was both surprised and a little puzzled when she heard the news. As far as she remembered from her past life, the Duchess of Zhenguo had been sent to the temple by her husband after she and her niece, Xie Xuening, drugged Lord Wen, nearly killing him. So what had happened in this life to make the Duke make the same decision? Lu Jintong was sure there was more to the story, but since she wasn't in the loop this time around, she pushed the thought aside. After all, Lord Wen's fate had already changed. Tang Cheng. Her nemesis was getting more formidable by the day. She'd even caught the Emperor's eye. Lord Wen seemed utterly bewitched by her, while Lu Jintong herself still hadn't gotten close to the 4th prince. Everything felt like a setback. Her only gain so far had been a chance encounter with the 7th prince while disguised as a man. And then there was her surprising discovery of a very different 3rd Miss Tang Cheng. This Tang Cheng had stirred up a beauty trend in the capital with her unique forehead makeup, and possessed an impressive talent for cultivating rare flowers. She'd even used that skill to build connections with Princess Yilin. Compared to her previous life, she was practically a different person. Is she trying to get close to the fourth prince? Having experienced rebirth, Lu Jintang grew wary. A suspicion formed in her mind. Had Tang Cheng been possessed by some wandering ghost? She began paying even closer attention to her. After all, the fourth prince had everything going for him, and in the last life, he had been the ultimate victor. It made sense that people would try to latch onto him. But Lu Jintang couldn't help feeling bitter. That third Miss Tang was clearly calculating. If she tried to use Lu Jintang, there was a real risk she'd be the one used instead. Why hasn't Tang Cheng gone back to clinging to the fourth prince? Wasn't she utterly obsessed with him? How could Lord Wen possibly compare to the fourth prince? If I'd known this would happen, I never would have interfered. I should have just let that fool Tang Cheng have her way. Suddenly, Lu Jintang was full of regret. Now that Tang Cheng had backed off, getting close to the fourth prince herself felt nearly impossible, like trying to reach the heavens. At that moment, a different face flashed through her mind, the handsome features of the seventh prince. If she couldn't approach the fourth prince, wasn't the seventh prince still an option? Even if he was currently overlooked and nearly invisible, marrying him would still make her a prince's consort. She'd wear red silk on her wedding day and enjoy all the pomp and glory. The more she thought about it, the more excited she became. With her knowledge of future events, helping the seventh prince rise to power wasn't impossible, right? And if she succeeded, not only could she crush Tang Cheng, she'd also have her revenge on the fourth prince. Lu Jintang's eyes gleamed with renewed ambition. After all the twists and turns and under the overwhelming pull of the original plot, Lu Jintang, the heroine of the book, still ended up choosing the male lead, the seventh prince. Meanwhile, Tang Cheng, who had transmigrated into the story, was busy cozying up to Princess Yilin, and had even managed to become acquainted with the fourth prince. She had no idea that her drastic changes had already caught the heroine's attention. But what truly blindsided her was the sudden marriage proposal from the Prince of Cheng's household. Tang Cheng had just returned from Princess Yilin's residence when the shocking news hit her like a bolt of lightning. Her face went pale, and she grabbed Jinhua's wrist in alarm. What did you say, Jinhua? The Prince of Cheng's family proposed marriage. Yes, Mississippi Madam has already agreed and even exchanged birth charts. The betrothal gifts from the Prince of Cheng's residence should arrive in a few days. Aren't you happy? Jinhua was startled by her mistress's reaction. Her mother had agreed. The birth charts were already exchanged, and the Prince of Cheng's household was about to send the official betrothal gifts. Tang Cheng nearly fainted. Internally, she was screaming. She absolutely did not want to marry into the Prince of Cheng's family. No. She had to find a way to stop this engagement. Happy? Of course I'm happy. Tang Cheng forced a cheerful smile and quickly turned to head back inside. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer, she wouldn't be able to keep up the act. Jin Shu, her most trusted maid, was fully aware of her secret affection for the fourth prince, and even approved of it. She firmly believed her mistress would be better off marrying him. Jinhua, on the other hand, clearly lacked perception. No wonder the young miss didn't trust her. Jin Shu cast a sidelong glance at Jinhua and hurried after her mistress to offer comfort. Jinhua. The servants in the courtyard noticed Tang Cheng's unusual reaction and began whispering among themselves in private. Peony Garden, though she used to be just a cleaning maid, Granny Yang had been with the household for years and was remarkably well informed. Determined to stay close to the fourth miss and earn the higher wages of a second-rank servant, she made sure to keep herself useful. Miss, she whispered mysteriously, I just caught wind of something. Third miss doesn't seem too pleased about her engagement to the Prince of Cheng. Looks like there might be trouble with this marriage after all. Tang Cheng was surprised. That's impossible. Didn't she just send a birthday gift to the old princess consort? Her four maids all nodded in agreement. Exactly. Granny Yang, where did you hear such nonsense? Granny Yang grew anxious. It's true. The servants at Ningxiang Pavilion saw it themselves. Third miss didn't look happy at all. Her face was terrible. She didn't look the least bit pleased. The four maids widened their eyes. Seriously? A flicker of amusement passed through Tang Cheng's almond-shaped eyes. Well, now this is interesting. Tang Cheng has been rather active lately. Maybe after spending time with Princess Yilin and meeting all those talented young men, Her standards have risen. The second son of the Prince of Cheng must seem too dull in comparison. At this point, Tang Cheng still had no idea that Tang Cheng had developed feelings for the fourth prince, the very one the original Tang Cheng had been obsessed with. The four maids. Their young miss actually made a lot of sense. That could very well be the reason. Why else would Tang Cheng suddenly change her mind? Granny Yang was thinking the same thing. After a bit of gossip, Tang Cheng lost interest, thinking it had little to do with her anyway. Late spring was giving way to early summer, and the weather was gradually warming. Though she was already 2 months pregnant, Tang Cheng's belly was still flat and she hadn't shown any signs of morning sickness. There was nothing about her appearance that hinted at pregnancy. People who had initially doubted the rumors of Tang Cheng faking her miscarriage were now starting to waver. After all, Tang Cheng was far too lively. Who bounces around like that after losing a child? Anyone else would have been bedridden for days. What if the miscarriage had been a deliberate lie? Still, the strengthening tonic was almost too miraculous to believe. Just look at Lord One. Aside from still struggling to have children, he was the picture of health. It wouldn't be surprising if he lived to 100. So when word spread that Tang Cheng planned to visit the racetrack for fun, the other branches of the Duke of Zhenguo's household couldn't help but grow suspicious and decided to test the waters themselves. That afternoon after lunch, Tang Cheng was teasing her parrot under the veranda when Wen Huaiyan arrived. Now that a scheme from 10 years ago had finally been exposed and the Duchess had gone off to live a life of spiritual retreat in a temple, Wen Huaiyan made another visit, just a day later. Tang Cheng, remembering how pitiful he'd looked after getting beaten up that night, smiled sweetly and teased, "So have your injuries healed?" Wen Huaiyan gave a small smile and replied vaguely, "I applied some ointment. I'm more or less fine now. I've decided to spend more time practicing martial arts." Tang Cheng nodded approvingly. "You should. Suffer a little now, so others can suffer later. Getting pinned down and beaten like that. How humiliating." Wen Huaiyan. The four maids. The heir of Marquis of Dingbei has invited me to the racetrack tomorrow to watch the show. Are you free? A shadow flickered in Wen Huaiyan's eyes. Su Jingxing hadn't told him about this? He made a mental note to deal with that later. A racetrack? How could that guy dare invite Tang Cheng to such a dangerous place, especially when she was carrying his child? I'm free. Even if he weren't, he would be. Someone needed to keep an eye on her. This woman was too reckless. As for stopping her, Wen Huaiyan knew her too well to even try. Better to tag along. Tang Cheng was delighted. Great. Let's go together. Wen Huaiyan nodded. All right. I'll pick you up tomorrow. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, he stood beside her and helped feed the parrot, coaxing it to speak a few words. The four maids' eyes sparkled at the sight. Their young miss and the young master looked so well matched standing side by side. Casually, Tang Cheng asked about the Duchess. Wen Huaiyan didn't hide anything. Avoiding the maid's ears, he lowered his voice and told her everything. Tang Cheng's eyes widened in disbelief. She couldn't believe things were so backward here. They actually had goo parasites? Still, this love bond goo seemed kind of weak. She muttered under her breath, unimpressed. Wen Huaiyan chuckled and said in a low voice, "Don't underestimate goo worms, Tang Cheng. The love bond goo isn't weak. It's just that the person with the mother goo was far weaker than the one with the child goo. If it had been someone with strong willpower, the effects would have been terrifying. My cousin was only able to influence my mother when she was little because my mother had already been hypnotized." Tang Cheng suddenly understood, and gave Wen Huaiyan a look of pity. "Wen Huaiyan, you poor thing. Lucky you met me and got that strengthening tonic. Otherwise, Monsieur would have eaten you alive by now." Wen Huaiyan. No, he wasn't pitiful at all. His hidden protectors wouldn't have let that happen. Wen Huaiyan, the Duchess only shaved part of her hair for religious practice, right? She didn't become a nun, so she'll return to the Duke's manor eventually. Tang Cheng asked curiously. Wen Huaiyan shook his head slightly. No. From now on, she'll live in the temple. The household has already arranged attendants to care for her daily needs. Tang Cheng looked genuinely stunned. Life in a quiet, austere nunnery. Can the Duchess really endure that kind of hardship? Tang Cheng asked. Wen Huaiyan gave a faint smile. She'll have to. There was no changing his father's decision. Although the love bond Gu had some influence, it was ultimately limited by the strength of its master, and its hold on his mother was not particularly strong. She had already changed long ago. Perhaps now that her son had grown up and recovered his health, she felt she had nothing to fear anymore. After all, when she marched over to the Marquis of Nanyang's estate to break off the engagement, Xie Xuening hadn't even entered the capital yet. Both he and his father understood this all too well. For the sake of the Duke's household's future, his father had acted decisively, sending the Duchess away to the temple. Tang Cheng blinked. I couldn't do it. I love fine clothes and good food far too much. Wen Huayan's lips curved into a smile. The next day dawned bright and clear, with a gentle breeze and radiant sunshine, perfect weather for an outing. Wen Huayan had taken the day off. He rode on horseback to the Marquis of Nanyang's residence to pick her up. Tang Cheng, dressed to the nines and accompanied by her parrot, her maids, a few older attendants, and a full escort of guards, left the estate in grand style. The suburban racetrack outside the capital was the favorite gathering spot for noble young men and highborn ladies to meet and enjoy horse racing. And where there are races, there's always an audience. It was said that many of the spectators were daughters of prestigious families, elegant young ladies of noble birth. Some women even joined the races themselves, proving they were every bit as bold and capable as the men. Tang Cheng was quite looking forward to such a lively event, full of young men and women. She had even asked Shinju to prepare 2 sets of bright red riding outfits in advance, just in case. Their low-key yet luxurious carriage attracted plenty of attention as it rolled through the streets. Wen Huayan, handsome as ever, rode beside the carriage on a pure black stallion. He was dressed in a fitted dark riding outfit, his striking appearance drawing admiring glances from many women along the roadside. Everyone knew that the person inside the carriage protected by young Lord Wen was none other than 4th Miss Tang. But no one could understand what Wen Huayan saw in her. Sure, she'd once been lucky enough to carry his child, but she was foolish enough to have lost it. Who knew if she'd ever get that kind of luck again? Their hearts simmered with jealousy. Once the carriage left the city gates, the road widened. From time to time, other carriages passed by, along with groups of finely dressed young lords galloping past on horseback. Those who were on good terms with Wen Huayan greeted him as they rode by, some even laughing and shooting him exaggerated winks. Young Lord Wen will go on ahead. Wouldn't want to interrupt your time with 4th Miss Tang. Ha ha! With a trail of laughter they sped off, leaving only a cloud of dust behind. Tang Cheng lifted the curtain and watched them ride off into the distance, unable to hold back a laugh. Then she turned her gaze to Wen Huayan riding ahead, her eyes naturally drifting toward the contours of his figure. She realized that Wen Huayan's figure wasn't as weak as she'd imagined. On the contrary, it was actually quite impressive. He really was born to wear clothes well. If he put in a bit of effort training, his physique might become even better. Who knew, he might even end up with abs. Tang Cheng's thoughts wandered all over the place, but her eyes never left Wen Huayan. Wen Huayan, riding his black stallion, had long noticed Tang Cheng sneaking glances at him. Privately pleased, the corners of his lips curled up. All his effort putting on this tight outfit to show off his physique hadn't been in vain. It had caught her attention just as he'd hoped. Still, the fact that he, the esteemed heir of the Duke Zhen's household, had to rely on his looks and body to keep Tang Cheng's gaze fixed on him, while constantly guarding against other men, left him with a bitter feeling. The racetrack was built on a small hill just outside the capital, not far from the city gates. They arrived in less than half an hour. After showing her invitation, Tang Cheng entered the racetrack with her maidservants, attendants and guards in tow, along with Wen Huayan. Wen Huayan had never been to the racetrack before. His health had always been poor, so like Tang Cheng, this was his first visit. The atmosphere was lively. Young noblemen were already racing on horseback, and the stands rang with cheers from noblewomen. Tang Cheng's interest was instantly piqued. She even had the sudden urge to jump in and ride a lap herself. But remembering her current condition, she had to suppress the impulse. All she could do was watch enviously. After I have this baby, I'm definitely going to ride to my heart's content, she vowed silently. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu had arrived earlier and had already raced once. When they saw Wen Huayan and Tang Cheng walking in together, both their eyes lit up, and they immediately spurred their horses toward them. Fourth Miss Tang may have a questionable reputation, but with her beauty standing beside Wen Huaiyan, the two of them made a striking pair, handsome and elegant, truly well-matched. Could Wen Huaiyan really have fallen for her? They wondered. Su Jingxing dismounted swiftly as he reached them, handing his reins to a waiting servant, and greeted them with a broad smile. Wen Huaiyan, Fourth Miss Tang, you're finally here. Qi Changxiu did the same. Then Su Jingxing caught sight of a birdcage held by one of the maids and blinked in surprise. Huh! Fourth Miss Tang, you even brought your parrot. That's right. Thought I'd let little parrot see the world a bit, Tang Cheng replied with a grin. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu both twitched at the corners of their mouths. A parrot? What world is it supposed to see? Qi Changxiu turned to Wen Huaiyan with a playful grin. Now that your health's improved, how about a race? Wen Huaiyan glanced at Tang Cheng, whose eyes were already sparkling with excitement as she watched the young men on the track. He narrowed his eyes slightly and smiled. All right. Time to show off a little. Qi Changxiu immediately noticed the subtle exchange and raised a brow. Seriously? Wen Huaiyan probably didn't even realize how much he looked like a male peacock about to spread its feathers. TSK. And that tight black riding outfit too. Showing off that body, huh? Shameless. Qi Changxiu couldn't help wondering whether he should have worn a tighter outfit himself. Wen Huaiyan, you're still injured. Don't push yourself. Tang Cheng, who had been watching the races, instinctively spoke up when she heard he was joining. Injured? Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu exchanged a quick glance. Something's fishy here. Wen Huaiyan. He ignored the way their eyes suddenly lit up and cleared his throat lightly. Tang Cheng, I'm fine now. She didn't believe him. No way. You were beaten so badly the other night you couldn't even stand. How could you possibly be fine after just a few days? The other night? Beaten? Couldn't even stand? Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu stared at him, eyes full of shocked curiosity. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu exchanged a meaningful glance, both grinning slyly. Wen Huaiyan, when did you get beaten up? Su Jingxing teased casually. Don't tell me you snuck into Fourth Miss Tang's boudoir and got caught red-handed by the Marquis of Nanyang? He said it jokingly, not expecting he'd hit the nail on the head. Tang Cheng looked genuinely surprised. Wow, young Lord Su, you're amazing. You actually guessed right. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu froze for a second, then burst into uncontrollable laughter. Heaven help them, Wen Huaiyan had actually done such a thing? Unbelievable. The best part? He got caught by the Marquis himself and was thoroughly beaten for it. Absolutely hilarious. Wen Huaiyan's handsome face was blank with despair. At this moment he truly had nothing to say. These damn friends. After laughing himself breathless, Su Jingxing clapped Wen Huaiyan on the shoulder, trying to sound sympathetic. No worries. First time climbing a wall, you didn't have the experience. Next time come prepared. You won't get caught by the Marquis again. Then he turned to Tang Cheng, barely holding back another grin. Wouldn't you agree, Fourth Miss Tang? Tang Cheng let out a laugh. So you're encouraging Wen Huaiyan to keep sneaking over my wall? Su Jingxing replied with a straight face. I'm simply suggesting he pick up the pride he left behind at the Marquis of Nanyang's residence. Wen Huaiyan, Qi Changxiu, the four personal maids and Yang Momo, they had no idea any of this had happened, especially the four maids who were always by Tang Cheng's side. The only time they ever left was after helping her bathe in the evenings. Young Lord One, really? It was one thing to visit during the day, but sneaking into the Marquis' estate at night? The maids were collectively speechless. Tang Cheng meanwhile looked at Wen Huaiyan with a sweet teasing smile. So, Wen Huaiyan, when are you going to reclaim your pride from the Marquis of Nanyang? Wen Huaiyan's eyes gleamed faintly. Might need to sneak in a few more times. Build up some experience. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu. They glanced at Tang Cheng, who clearly hadn't caught the deeper meaning behind Wen Huaiyan's words, their expressions complicated. What a scheming man, they both thought at the same time. Tang Cheng shot Wen Huaiyan a look of disdain. You're so weak. Wen Huaiyan smiled faintly. That's why I need your cooperation. Tang Cheng narrowed her eyes at him. Aren't you afraid of getting beaten again? Wen Huaiyan spread his hands. Well, what can I say? I only have myself to blame for not mastering martial arts yet. Tang Cheng nodded in agreement. True. But the more you get beaten, the thicker your skin gets. And once it's thick enough, bam! You're practically invincible. As she spoke, she reached out and poked his chest, then casually added a comment. Still a bit soft right now. But once that skin thickens, it'll toughen up. Wen Huayan's mouth twitched. What is going on in that head of hers? Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu couldn't help bursting into laughter. This fourth Miss Tang, what a character! The group was already attracting attention, and several noble ladies had been secretly watching them for a while. Seeing how Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu laughed so freely in front of fourth Miss Tang made them inwardly sour with jealousy. Hey fourth Miss Tang, Su Jingxing said with a smile. Do you know how to ride? Want to race? Qi Changxiu turned to her with interest too. The four personal maids immediately looked anxious. They couldn't believe young Lord Su had brought that up of all things. Doesn't he know the lady is pregnant? How could she possibly ride a horse? Wen Huayan stiffened and shot a sharp look at Su Jingxing. Tang Cheng doesn't know how to ride. He cut in quickly. Tang Cheng. What do you mean I don't know how to ride? She'd ridden star beasts before. But then she thought of the baby in her belly and had no choice but to swallow her pride. She sighed and nodded reluctantly. I don't know how to ride. Wen Huayan quietly let out a breath of relief. Thank goodness she still had some sense. But he relaxed too soon. Su Jingxing gave him a teasing smirk. That's fine. You can teach her hand in hand. Perfect chance to get closer to her, he thought with satisfaction. Truly the best kind of friend. Su Jingxing mentally gave himself a pat on the back. Wen Huayan took a deep breath and resisted the urge to kick him. He replied with a dark face, Tang Cheng hasn't been feeling well these past few days. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu blinked in surprise. Really? She looks fine to me. It's that time of the month, Wen Huayan said stiffly. He was willing to say anything to stop Tang Cheng from doing something that might hurt the baby. Tang Cheng's cheeks flushed bright red, and she shot him a glare. Stop talking nonsense. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu suddenly looked like they understood everything. So fourth Miss Tang is on her period. TSK Wen Huayan even knows that? Both of them gave him sly, knowing looks. Tang Cheng was mortified. Enough already. Well, with one of you injured and the other unwell, I guess there's no chance of a race today, Su Jingxing said with exaggerated regret. Just when Wen Huayan finally recovered too. But apparently his courage recovered faster than his sense. He went and got caught sneaking into a girl's chamber. I'm fine, Wen Huayan said coolly. Let's have a race. He wasn't about to pass up a chance to show off his riding skills in front of Tang Cheng. Excellent. Su Jingxing grinned, thrilled at the chance to finally outdo Wen Huayan. Qi Changxiu also smiled with thinly veiled mischief. Tang Cheng. The four maids. About the time it takes to drink a cup of tea later, Wen Huayan and the other two young men rode onto the track, each astride a fine steed. Their presence immediately drew everyone's attention. Among the three, Wen Huayan, with the most distinguished background and the most striking looks, naturally attracted the most gazes. Tang Cheng lounged comfortably on a seat Wen Huayan had arranged for her, watching the trio enjoy the spotlight. Just then, a handsome man in an ornate brocade robe approached her, followed by two attendants. Fourth Miss Tang, I've long heard of your reputation. A pleasure to meet you. Tang Cheng reluctantly tore her gaze away from Wen Huayan and looked curiously at the tall, handsome man in front of her. And you are? The man gave a refined, gentlemanly smile and introduced himself politely. Xiao Heng, heir to Prince Rong. Tang Cheng immediately understood. Xiao Heng and Wen Huayan were considered somewhat tragic companions in the capital, though for different reasons. Wen Huayan wasn't born with fertility issues, but Xiao Heng, despite being perfectly healthy, had a notoriously weak lineage when it came to heirs. He was already past the age of 20. His first wife had passed away a year ago, and though he had several concubines, he only had one daughter from his late wife. The princess consort of Prince Rong was reportedly beside herself with worry over the lack of heirs. It was said that any future wife chosen to become Xiao Heng's new consort must not only come from a decent family, but more importantly, be fertile. Well, that was her specialty. Too bad no one knew it. A pleasure to meet you, Tang Cheng replied calmly, giving him a look of pity. Xiao Heng's mouth twitched. He could already guess what kind of pleasure she meant by that. Clearing his throat, Slightly embarrassed, he got to the point. Miss Tang, I heard your esteemed father is gathering information on eligible young men for you. I was wondering, might I have a chance at catching your eye? Tang Cheng raised an eyebrow. So this is you, personally throwing your hat in the ring? Xiao Heng smiled modestly. That's right. May I be granted the honor? The 4 personal maids were stunned. Wait, the heir of Prince Rong is courting Our Lady? Tang Cheng looked Xiao Heng up and down with approval. You've got good taste. She was, after all, someone with an unusually fertile body. Conceiving came easy to her. It was just a pity no one around here knew that. But Xiao Heng seemed to have guessed, and more importantly had acted on it. Tang Cheng found herself looking at him more favorably. You may not be quite as good as Wen Huaiyan, but you're not bad either. Fine, I'll give you a chance. She was a hot commodity. How could she not have a few suitors? Gold would always shine eventually. Even if no one here considered something like fertility value, being able to produce heirs was still very desirable. Tang Cheng couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. Like finally having her moment in the sun. The 4 maids were in shock. What about young Lord One? Has Miss forgotten she's carrying his child? They had all assumed that Wen Huaiyan would be the inevitable choice for future husband. But now, with the heir of Prince Rong stepping into the picture, and judging by the smile on their lady's face, they suddenly weren't so sure. Although he'd been told he wasn't as good as young Lord One, the heir of Prince Rong, Xiao Heng, still smiled cheerfully. Miss Tang, if I were to say I fell for you at first sight, I doubt you'd believe me. You'd probably think I had some ulterior motive for approaching you. Tang Cheng raised a brow. You're absolutely right. Xiao Heng surprised everyone with his candor. Well, I do have a motive for approaching you. The 4 maids. What kind of move is that? I figured as much, Tang Cheng replied with a casual smile. She appreciated his honesty, even admired it. Her opinion of him had just gone up a notch. She mentally added him to her short list of potential husbands. A flicker of surprise passed through Xiao Heng's eyes. Clearly, Tang Cheng wasn't as brainless as the rumors made her out to be. That made her even more appealing. He gave her a smile with hidden meaning. Wen Huaiyan's reason for getting close to you isn't that different from mine. I'm just being more upfront about it. At that moment, Wen Huaiyan was still galloping across the racetrack, confidently showing off his riding skills. Unaware that a new rival had just appeared. One who was now downplaying all his previous efforts and trying to level the playing field. Tang Cheng nodded thoughtfully. You are more direct and honest than Wen Huaiyan. But he promised that if I marry him, he won't take concubines or bedmaids. Only me for life. And more importantly, he's better looking than you. Only one woman for life? Was Wen Huaiyan just telling Tang Cheng what she wanted to hear? Xiao Heng's lips twitched, but he wisely kept his thoughts to himself. After all, Tang Cheng clearly favored Wen Huaiyan at the moment. And as for looks, well, even he couldn't argue with that. Wen Huaiyan was outrageously good-looking, few could compete. Well, maybe the 4th prince, whose face could rival Wen Huaiyan's. Maybe. A strange thought suddenly popped into Xiao Heng's head. Could it be that Tang Cheng's so-called affection is just based on looks? Still, no matter what she was thinking, he wasn't the type to give up easily. Besides, Wen Huaiyan hadn't won her over yet. That meant there was still a chance. With Wen Huaiyan busy showing off on the racetrack, Xiao Heng seized the opportunity to spend more time with Tang Cheng. Miss Tang, would you be interested in going for a ride? Tang Cheng rolled her eyes inwardly. Why is everyone so obsessed with horse racing? She deliberately ran her hand across her lower belly, and used Wen Huaiyan's earlier excuse without hesitation. I'm not feeling well these past few days. The 4 maids twitched at the corners of their mouths. Xiao Heng, who had been married and had women before, immediately understood what she meant. Though a bit disappointed, he quickly turned and whispered something to his attendant. A moment later, the servant returned carrying a beautifully crafted warming bottle. If you're not feeling well, perhaps this will help warm your abdomen, Xiao Heng said with a gentle smile as he handed the bottle to her. Tang Cheng. She didn't need the warming bottle at all. The weather was already starting to warm up. Just not using a fan would have been enough. Using a warming bottle? That would only make her hotter. It felt like she dug a hole and jumped right in. But since it was a gesture of kindness from the heir of Prince Rong, Tang Cheng had no choice but to accept it with a stiff smile and even thank him. Thank you. That's very thoughtful of you. Too thoughtful, damn it. If she were actually on her period, she might have appreciated the gesture. The problem was it was just a random excuse she'd made up. Now she was stuck with it. Xiaoheng smiled, lips curved slightly. No need to thank me. With the warm bottle in her arms, Tang Cheng made idle small talk with him. As the heat gradually seeped into her body, she started to feel hotter and hotter, so hot she was practically sweating on the verge of tears. She desperately wished Wen Huaiyan would come back and take this cursed bottle away. The four maids. How considerate this heir of Prince Rong is. Pity the young lady who just said whatever came to mind. Just then Wen Huaiyan, having thoroughly crushed two of his friends on the racetrack, turned around in high spirits, only to see Xiaoheng hovering around Tang Cheng, fawning over her. His handsome face darkened instantly. He ground his teeth in silence. The moment he lets his guard down, this woman starts attracting bees and butterflies. Leaving his two friends behind, Wen Huaiyan kicked his horse into a gallop, heading straight for Tang Cheng, completely ignoring the group of noble ladies eagerly approaching him. The ignored noble ladies. How infuriating. From a distance, Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu watched the scene unfold, both wearing schadenfreude lace grins, as if watching a juicy drama. Didn't think the heir of Prince Rong would get involved too. What's so special about Tang Cheng anyway? Su Jingxing muttered, rubbing his chin in disbelief. Qi Changxiu's eyes flickered with insight. The heir has a weak bloodline. You mean, he's after the same thing Huaiyan is? Su Jingxing frowned. Maybe Tang Cheng was able to conceive Huaiyan's child after just one accidental night because the two of them are highly compatible, Qi Changxiu said. Besides, Huaiyan seems to genuinely like her now. Maybe. Su Jingxing shrugged. Families with thin bloodlines and only one heir per generation weren't uncommon among noble households. The heir of Prince Rong might just be the first of many. Desperation made people try all kinds of things. Even if Tang Cheng had a bad reputation, lost her virtue, aborted a child, as long as she could conceive it wouldn't matter. And if it turned out everything was false? There was always divorce. Excuses, she had a whole basket of them. Back when Wen Huaiyan and Tang Cheng exchanged birth horoscopes, Tang Cheng's 8 characters, Bazi, would have been revealed. It wasn't something easily hidden. And if hers indicated prosperity and fertility, Qi Changxiu could already imagine just how popular Tang Cheng would become. When Huaiyan looked the handsome man in front of him up and down, his sharp eyes narrowing slightly, his tone edged with displeasure. Your Highness Xiao, what are you doing here? A fair lady like Miss Tang deserves to be pursued. I'm courting her now. Xiaoheng, the heir of Prince Rong, replied with a pleasant smile. But the moment the two men locked eyes, sparks flew between them. Everyone nearby could feel the tension. An invisible duel unfolding through their stares. Tang Cheng. The four maids. Wen Huaiyan sneered, striking directly where it hurt. If I'm not mistaken, isn't the princess consort of Prince Rong quite fond of the Duke Chengen's legitimate granddaughter? Wasn't she hoping to make her her daughter-in-law? The heir of Prince Rong remained unfazed. He smiled as he countered. My mother has more than one candidate in mind. Until an engagement is set, her preferences don't matter. As far as I know, he added, smiling pointedly, your mother has expressed her dislike for Miss Tang and once declared that she would never be allowed to marry into the Duke Zhenguo's household. When Huaiyan calmly countered, unhurried and composed, there's no need for you to worry, Your Highness. My father is very satisfied with Tang Cheng. As for my mother, she was simply stuck in a dead end for a while. She's moved past it and no longer interferes in my affairs, especially not my marriage. He paused, his gaze sharpening. Besides, Your Highness already has several favored concubines in your household, not to mention a daughter left behind by your former consort. They say it's never easy being a stepmother. If you truly care for Tang Cheng, then don't drag her into your pit of fire. She deserves better. Prince Rong's heir let out a breathy laugh, half amused, half exasperated. A pit of fire, is it? That's a bit harsh. But whether or not she's suited for me, well, that's something only time and effort will tell. I believe Miss Tang won't disappoint me. He tilted his head slightly, eyes gleaming. I've heard you promised her a life where she'd be your one and only. Can you truly stand by that? When Huaiyan smiled charmingly, confidently. When I make a promise, I keep it. My word is my bond. Is that so? The heir's lips curled in a half-smile. The verbal sparring between these two striking men, right in front of Tang Cheng, left the surrounding crowd stunned. Su Jingxing and Qi Changxiu looked as if they'd just swallowed lemons. The noble ladies who had followed the group were practically fuming, their eyes shooting daggers at Tang Cheng from all directions. Tang Cheng, meanwhile, was thoroughly entertained. So this is what it looked like when two men put on a show. And as the woman being fought over, she felt rather pleased with herself. In high spirits, she smiled sweetly and declared, "All right. I understand now why you're both eager to marry me. Since this concerns my lifelong happiness, I'll just have to choose carefully and take my time." Her words sent shockwaves through the crowd. Was Tang Fourth mistaking herself too seriously? A little self-awareness wouldn't hurt. She'd better be careful not to end up with nothing in the end. The air of Prince Rong's smile deepened, and he shot Wen Huayan a subtle taunting glance. Wen Huayan's expression darkened instantly. She's carrying my child and still dares consider marrying someone else? Not a chance. Good thing I decided to follow her today. Just then Wen Huayan finally noticed the hand warmer, the Tang Posy, in Tang Cheng's arms. He grabbed it from her without a second thought. "Tang Cheng, where did you get this?" Tang Cheng tilted her head toward the air and replied with a cheerful smile. "His Highness gave it to me." Now that the Tang Posy was gone, Tang Cheng finally felt cool again, physically and mentally. Wen Huayan, he was suddenly very tempted to toss the damn thing as far as he could.